The next game up for review this month is a game I don't particularly like. Pingus. No, not Pingus, we're not talking about Dr. Eggman here. We're talking about Pingus, the Lemmings clone. Now like I said, I don't particularly like this game, and it's not that it's a bad game, let me explain. I've never really been a fan of puzzle games in general, and quite honestly, I really don't like Lemmings and games like Lemmings. I feel that they're annoyingly tedious, and when you finally figure out a way to solve the puzzle, you start working towards the solution, and if you make one mistake and one of your lemmings dies, you have to start the entire thing over. That is not fun to me. But I know that a lot of people really like puzzle games and lemmings, and quite honestly, Pingus is a pretty decent game. It started all the way back in 1998 as a Lemmings clone. Active development stopped in 2011, though there's still stuff happening in GitHub, so it might be forked or other people might be contributing or whatever. But it was pretty much built by one guy, and at some point he started to put features in that made Pingus kind of its own game. The core gameplay is still very much Lemmings-like, but the game has some other features that make it stand out from Lemmings. For example, there's this overworld. Now the overworld is actually the tutorial world, so none of these levels are very difficult, but they're a good way to get familiar with the game. Funnily enough, there's actually a story around Pingus. Once you beat the tutorial world, you can kind of see the ending of the story and what happens to the Pingus and whatever. It's kind of an interesting idea, but it doesn't really affect the gameplay at all. And also compared to Lemmings, there's a new action, or I guess type of Pingus. It's called the Jumper, and it does exactly what you might expect. It causes the penguin to jump, which is handy for gaps and things, but there are some levels that are specifically built around this. And when you're having to negotiate like 5 or 6 different jumps with 5 or 6 different penguins, it becomes very frustrating. Once you finish the tutorial world, the rest of the content comes in the form of level sets, of which there are 5 in the default Ubuntu install. Other distros might have other level sets here, but these appear to be the defaults. Each level set more or less has its own theme around Christmas or Halloween or desert. The factory campaign seems to be the canonical continuation of the story mode, though there's no overworld or anything. Each level starts out with a title and a little description that may or may not give a hint on how to actually beat the level. There's always a number of penguins that you start with and penguins you have to save. Occasionally there's a time limit, and just like Lemmings, there's a number of different actions you can have your penguins do to help them get across or around or through obstacles. Admittedly, I didn't play the original Lemmings a whole lot, so I can't really compare the two directly. But I can say that the gameplay is pretty much exactly what I remember from Lemmings. You've got these penguins, which are obviously taking the place of Lemmings, and your goal is to get them from the starting point to the ending point. And there's all these obstacles and traps along the way. You'll need to dig, mine, build, bash, and even jump across obstacles to get your penguins from the starting point to the end point. The graphics are alright for the time period. I mean, they certainly aren't great, but for a game that was started in 1998 and developed by one guy, it looks pretty good. The music is actually pretty good, but there's not very many tracks. I felt like I kept hearing the same 5 or 6 songs, but level sets can bring along their own tunes, so that was cool. The sounds in the game, like what the penguins make and things, it's not that they're bad quality, they're just cheesy. It doesn't take away from the game, but it's something I notice. Now the key bindings are a little weird, or at least they took a little time to get used to. P is pause and space is to speed things up. I found myself constantly hitting space thinking it would pause only to have my lemmings fall to their death or something. It was unbelievably frustrating. And the options menu is pretty sparse. You don't have the ability to rebind your keys or anything like that. You can choose several different renderers, which is kind of interesting. It was probably more useful in the early 2000s than it is today. You can even have it print the FPS, which is kind of funny in 2018. Imagine a computer that can't run this. It also has a built-in editor, which is pretty cool if you're into, building your own levels and challenges and things like that. All in all, Pingus is a good game, and if you're into Lemmings and puzzle games like that, you should definitely give this one a try. It's really not my style, I don't like games like this, but I know a lot of people do, and if you do like this sort of game, it's available on pretty much every platform out there. Windows, macOS, Linux. It's most likely in your software repositories, but it's also available as a Flatpak. And like I said, it doesn't appear to be actively developed anymore, but the source was recently moved from GitHub to GitLab, and it seems like people are still doing bug fixes and stuff, so I don't know. Maybe there'll be another version someday. At any rate, it's a decent game and definitely a classic open source game, and I think you should give it a try. I hope you liked this video, and if you did, be sure to leave a like, comment, subscribe. If you're interested in getting your feet wet with a VPS or cloud service, you can check out the description for a link to Linode. You can get yourself a $20 credit for using my link, which is linode.com/eg. I appreciate all your support, and thanks for watching.